and a very warm welcome. I'm your host Pallavi Kulkarni. It's a pleasure to have you join us for an insightful panel discussion. Today's topic is student-centered learning. How schools can shift from traditional teaching methods to more personalized approaches. We have a panel of experts shaping the future of education. They guide us through this fascinating discussion. First on the panel, we are honored to have Mrs. Maitreyi Satyadev, Director of Sindhi Group of Schools. She is an accomplished education leader with over 32 years of experience, including 23 in executive roles and 20 years as a principal. She has received the Torchbearer Pedagogical Leader Award and contributed significantly to CBSE examinations and the National Achievement Survey. Next on the panel, we have Mrs. Devi M, Principal of Cambridge Public School, with a Master's in Mathematics and Education along with certifications in school leadership and data analytics. She brings over a decade of experience. Mrs. Devi has earned multiple awards, including Educator of the Year and Principal of the Year. Her leadership has driven exceptional results in board and competitive exams like IIT NEET and KCET. Last but not least, we have Mrs. Vinita Anil, Principal of Primus Public School. She is an experienced educationist with over 25 years in the field. She has served as the lecturer in economics, Principal of CBSE School and Associate Academic Director in Bangalore. A triple postgraduate in Economics, Public Administration and Education, Ms. Vinita is also a certified soft skill and motivational coach cum designer thinker from IIT Delhi. She actively contributes to community service, working with underprivileged groups and believes that discovery of one's strength leads to progressive transformation. I welcome all three of you to the panel today.
Thank you so much.
With that, I have my first question to Mrs. Maitreyi Satyadev. So, ma'am, with your abundance of experience, firstly, I would like to know what is student-centered learning and how it is different from traditional teaching methods.
You know, in the educational journey across the universe, across continents, the industry is constantly changing to discuss ways of educating students. And each time it's a different journey, right from the traditional method to the very new student-centric learning. Now, student-centered approach is a teaching method that focuses on creating continuous learning for the students, wherein the focus is the student's interest. So the teacher is in the background and it is the student who is in the foreground, who is in the forefront of all activities. So it is the student who decides what he or she wants to learn and whether he will be successful in reaching his or her goal that would perhaps come in the senior level and higher education level. But in the lower levels, we can motivate the students, we can harness their interest in various things around us, and at the same time, in student-centric learning, what happens is it is very relevant to the student. A student may want to learn about his city.
Yes.
A student may want to learn about his or her school. So that is the relevance. And that, in a nutshell, is experiential learning. So when it is student-centric, they control the flow of the lesson. They are the ones who will look at things and demand. And teacher is a supporter, is a facilitator at the most. In foundation stage, there is a flip side to everything, right?
Yes.
Teacher loses control of the class because it is student-centric.
Yes.
And at the same time, the teacher may also feel irrelevant in a classroom scenario when she is a facilitator. But in reality, The students achieve all their goals with teachers facilitating them. Without the teacher, they still cannot get to the end point. It is very different from the traditional method. Traditional method uses the talk and chalk methods primarily. You have the lecture method, and the focus is more on rote memorization. And teacher is the authority. She knows it all. She or he knows it all. So what they say is final.
Yes.
It does not give any way for any kind of discussion.
Okay.
Whereas a student-centric learning will open up windows for discussion. There is so much one can learn through student-centric learning, and believe me, I think that's the way to go. That is what we should be focusing on.
So, I have one add-on question to this. Since the methodologies are changing, classroom atmospheres are changing, how about the curriculum? Is the current curriculum really supporting this ideology of student-centered learning?
We have to work on it.
Okay.
It's a new thing. But believe me, CBSE has made enormous strides. In fact, their whole thing is called as Jadui Pitara. And they believe in learning through play.
Yes.
And focus is on experiential learning. And the teachers have to be very, very relevant. You want to talk about a revolution in another part of the world, at the end of the lesson, you have to bring its relevance to what is happening.
Yes.
Right? So, we have made a lot of strides in CBSE because they have introduced project-based learning,
Yes.
which is a very important part of student-centric learning. See, they get to their assessments in multifaceted approaches. It need not be a pen and paper test at all times. See, so that is why it is very relevant, and it is very important because students are motivated to learn vis-a-vis teacher-centric
Yes.
approach, where the teacher has to force the student to learn. Here, the learning objectives and the goals are set by the student to learn. We have to take small steps and arrive at the final goal.
Yes, that's wonderful answer to start off the panel discussion with. So my next question is to Mrs. Vinita. So how do you manage to connect students with a personal level and still meet those academic goals?
Yeah. So I think most of it is, completely capsuled in my 3 months, discussion of what is student-centered learning when compared to what was teacher-centered or the traditional method of teaching and learning, right? So if I'm looking at it, we cannot completely rule out the fact that teacher does play an important role, which ma'am has told. It will be
Yes.
a repetition in a different way if I'm telling you, because it is the teacher who has to do the core planning. So as ma'am said, rightly said, that the relevance to what we are teaching, to what is expected in today's world, everything that the facilitator or the teacher that we call in today's world is supposed to be extremely, well abreast with everything that's happening. I cannot say this is not my area and I cannot guide you. So be it technology, which our new generation is actually quite tech savvy, and all of us are only catching up to that rat race. But nevertheless, what is required for me in order to equip my students for achieving their goals, I should be well abreast and I should keep accepting the fact that my learning has not stopped. Right? So that is one thing. So the teachers have to be open to learning and continuous learning, and then they know that they have to make those changes into. Now, when coming to the student, if I'm a teacher or a facilitator of a particular class of 30 students, I should know all my 30 students in and out.
Yes.
It's very, very important in any form of teaching learning process, because only then I will be able to do justice to a child. When we have various ways of teaching learning patterns, or the child has various ways, he or she can be an auditory learner, kinesthetic learner, or whatever ways that they learn, they prefer to learn. I, as a facilitator, should have understood that, and I should have created, because we have a set curriculum.
Yes.
I cannot change the curriculum that the board has given me, but I have the facility, or I have the liberty to make changes within that curriculum to make sure that it is fitting into the brackets of all my 30 children of a class. Because if he or she is a kind of visual learner or a person who loves games, I can create a gamification addition to my existing content, right? So how am I going to dole out my content to my 30 students in a different way? That shows the creativity of a teacher or a facilitator. That is where the personalized touch comes in for your to just connect to your question.
Yes.
Right? I have my academic goals, which I cannot say we are walking into a place or into a world where it is only conceptual learning. Ultimately, every parent across the world looks for those grades and looks for the next best university or the placement that the child gets, right? So let's not rule out that reality. As educators, we do say, let's not take the stress or pass on the stress to the children that you have to be a topper, but nevertheless, they have to fit into the world, the market scenario, right? So for that, I would have to do my extra work. It is not about, like ma'am said, chalk and talk. It is not going to be that. It is not walking into my classroom with a textbook where I say, oh, there is a fixed content. My work is very easy. I just read out from that, or I just teach only that and I walk away. No, I would have to go much beyond, because my children already know what is there in the content. They want to know more from you and how best you can make it interesting for him or her, so that they are connected with you and then your academic goals are achieved.
Yes.
Right? So it is a mutual way. I would say it is more of pedagogical way of teaching, not just pedagogical.
Yes, that's a wonderful answer, ma'am. So with that, I have my next question to Mrs. Devi. So how does personalized learning prepare students for the future of academic challenges? Of course, when the methods are changing frequently, there comes a lot of challenges that even students have to face. So particularly in higher education and vocational paths.
Wonderful. Now, when we talk about personalized education, in simple words, I can say education which is being designed to serve the learner individually, which means when I'm serving the learner individually, the instructions have to be tailor-made based on the interest of the students, based on the needs of the students, based on the capacity of the student. So when we talk about higher education, definitely there is lots of academic challenges which the students have to face. Now, how will personalized learning help the students to overcome these challenges? Definitely it helps. First of all, it builds lots of resilience and adaptability. So when lots of resilience and adaptability is built in the students, they can overcome the complexities that they will face during the higher education. It will focus mainly on their strength and on their interest. So when the focus is on their strength and on their interest, definitely they can attain their goals with ease. And also they can pursue their passion. Next, I would say that it strengthens critical thinking and problem solving techniques among the students. Because as we move on to the higher education, definitely a lot of problem solving and critical thinking skills are required by the students. Fourthly, I would say self-centered learning, because when the students become self-centered, they take the accountability and the ownership of their own learning. Unlike in the school days where we have the teachers all the time going around the students and giving them, it's complete spoon feeding, telling them what has to be done, giving them daily notes, cross-checking if things have reached their parents, sending alerts to parents. So all this is not going to happen when they move on to the higher education.
Yes.
Because it's going to be completely personalized, so the students have to take accountability and ownership for their learning. And most important, what I observe is it reduces the stress and anxiety. Now, nowadays, what we see is most of the students are into complete stress and anxiety. Now, the main reason for this is expectation, a very high expectation from the parents. They expect my child should be a rank holder, my child should get 99 point something, even 98 is less for them. And they always try to compare their own child with maybe the siblings, the cousins, or other friends. So this definitely gives immense tension and pressure to the children. So when students are involved in this personalized learning, definitely the stress level, anxiety will definitely come down and they will be able to do the best because they are going to learn at their own pace, at their own time.
Yes. With that, I have one question to all three of you. All three of you might have faced one or the other challenges being teachers as well. while facing this transition of student-based, student-centric learning. So, can you quote any examples as teachers? What challenges you have faced? All three of you.
May I?
Yeah, sure.
As a teacher, to bring in changes from a traditional system to a modern student centric learning, it takes a lot on the teacher,
Yes.
right? They have to unlearn whatever practices they were doing all along
Yes.
and relearn
Yes.
how to facilitate,
Yes.
how to guide, how to support, so that the child at the school level I'm talking about will meet the goal. So what has happened now is in the current scenario, now it is competency based learning.
Yes.
Okay, so that benefits the child. So the child can have a benchmark and try to aim for that. As she mentioned, the stress is about competition with the others.
Yes.
Where student centric learning is concerned, it is competition with yourself. So that makes it very easy for the child. But for a teacher to adapt, to unlearn and relearn is a challenge by itself. Like we introduced project based learning. What used to be hitherto for 11th and 12th science, now in CBSE you have art integration with subjects.
Yes.
You have variety of things. Of course, we are also getting training by the CBSE, yet to implement is a challenge.
Yes. Very true. Yes.
Yeah, I can, if I have to add on, what I can say from my own experience and what we see now in the position of, the principal or head of a school and watching other teachers adapting is definitely classroom management skills. Somewhere it is all to do with
It
this.
is difficult.
Yes.
Right? It is definitely difficult because when I initially when you asked me my previous question,
Yes.
it was very easy that the traditional method very clearly said where you are sitting, you stay put there, and students
Yes.
are meant to just sit and listen.
Yes.
No questions asked, no discussions whatsoever. The teacher teaches whatever is there in the textbook, walks away. Must be the children wanted to know more, but they never had the guts to ask more because that was the method that was drilled into our head. But now with the kind of exposure, children also know much more than what we are teaching them or discussing. So they come ready with many more questions that we have to be ready for. In the process, you would also have, we cannot ignore, as I said, I cannot ignore my a handful of students who are slowly catching up with that speed, right? So I have a couple of slow learners, I will have the medium paced learners, and I have the very, very gifted learners, but each of them learning at their own pace. But how do I manage and keep the interest of all my 30 students in that 40 minutes time? I have a whole lot of headache on me that my syllabus has to be completed, because if my syllabus is not completed, I know my results are going to take a big toll.
Yes.
Right? So that is one thing. So that's there right up on my head, like a sword. Right? I also I cannot just complete a syllabus just like that. My academic goal has to be met. That means all my 30 students have to fare really well for me to prove that I'm a good teacher. In the process, I cannot ignore these kind of interesting things in a student-centered learning and make the class interesting, yet have all the 30 included into the discussion. So classroom management is a Herculean task, which the teachers of today, with a lot of continuous professional development trainings that they're going through, they are getting hands-on on it, but a lot more to do.
Yes.
To add on to this, when in a class of say 40 students, we might have one or two students with special needs.
Yes.
Now to cater to these students, it's a tedious job. Are we as a school or as a management trained our teachers, whether it's professionally or technically, on how to handle the students with special needs? So this is a quite big challenge and management has to look into these things.
Yes, that's wonderful answer. Since we are talking about teachers now, so my next question is to Mrs. Maitri. What professional development is required for teachers to transition to a student-centered approach?
Initially, I think they need to understand the concept of their role,
Yes.
what it is that they will be doing, right? But they definitely need training to design their classes and implement, because now they have to lead in a very subtle manner
Yes.
without coming forward and dictating terms. That no longer exists in student-centered learning. So they have to be taught about integration of technology, use of digital tools, then project-based learning. Above all this, they also need to be taught how to assess. In student-centered learning, what happens is your classroom scenarios can be very chaotic, right? But at the end of it, students should have learned
Yes.
because you are giving way to discussions and you will arrive at your answers. So teachers need to be taught to lead the discussions. They have been used to only delivering,
Yes.
right? Delivering, correcting, demanding, stating, whatever words you want to use.
Yes.
But they have to be taught how to control without controlling.
Yes.
They have to lead the way. So they have to be taught a few skills. And digital tools now, most of them use it, but still to use it as a tool for assessment in student-centric learning is something which they need to learn once again. It is not easy. I think we are on the right track. We should be getting there. And then classroom management also is very important.
True.
Within the decibel levels to manage.
Yes.
That's what I think is important.
That's wonderful, ma'am. With that, I have my next question to Mrs. Devi. So, how do you encourage students to take ownership of their learning in a student-centered environment?
So when we say student-centered environment, definitely the ownership and the accountability should be that of the students.
Yes.
But as facilitators, how do we encourage the students?
Yes.
The very first thing I would say is to connect whatever ideas and skills and concepts that we teach to the real world. Now, while I was teaching mathematics in the college, my students would always ask me to standard questions. Ma'am, where do we use this sine theta and cos theta? Why should I know tan theta is sine theta by cos theta? How is it going to help me in my life? Now we are talking about generation alpha, generation beta. So they want to know where am I going to use this trigonometry in my life?
Yes.
So as long as the teachers are not able to connect the concepts into the real world, they are not ready to accept it also. So we have to create that interest in the students. So that will be one big encouragement for all the students. Second, I would say we need to provide more different ways of learning, different ways of assessment. It should not just be the formative assessment. Assessment can be, say, in the form of activities, or learning can happen in the form of quiz, polls, the form of projects. And after any kind of a formative assessment, a proper feedback is definitely required for the student. A feedback could be positive, could be negative, but it all depends on the teachers, how we convey this to the students and motivate them. So when we give the right feedback to the students, definitely they will understand what is that which is lacking in me.
Yes.
What is the improvement that is needed in me, and how do I get about this kind of an improvement? So the teacher should be facilitating all these aspects. And finally, I would say we need to encourage the students in some kind of a healthy risk taking. So when a child takes a healthy risk, the child would make mistakes, and the child will feel that it is okay not to be okay. So it's okay to make mistake. My teacher is not going to punish me. She is not going to be ridiculed. So in such cases, definitely it's going to be a kind of an encouragement and motivation for these children to take up, personalized learning.
That's great, ma'am. With that, let's take a short break and get back to this engaging panel discussion. Renuka?
Yes, ma'am.
Please come in.
Yes, ma'am.
What's the schedule?
So, ma'am, there are 70-80 candidates who has come for the interview.
70 to 80.
Right.
Okay, send them inside.
All right, ma'am.
Renuka, send the first candidate. Please come in.
Hello, ma'am.
Hi,
Please come sit. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Renuka, send the next candidate.
Where can we
Yes, please come in.
work with the subconscious capacity?
Yeah, sure, please sit. Renuka,
Yes, ma'am.
come here.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, why do you look so tensed?
None of them fitting well for the job. What should I do?
Right. Is that it?
That's a lot.
Why don't you try EdHR?
What is that now?
EdHR will help you hire the best teacher for your school. So you can just sign up to that.
Wanted top tier teachers for your school? Sign up with EdHR now and unlock a world of talent. Hire the best that inspire greatness. Transform your school today.
That's interesting. I think it will make my job much easier, and every principal should use that.
Right.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the engaging panel discussion. With that, my next question is to Mrs. Vinita. So we were talking about how student-centric learning is very much personalized and how students can take ownership of their own activities. But my question to you is, how will this foster project-based learning and peer feedback, group projects? How can they build social skills despite having this student-centered personalized learning?
See, the answer lies in the question itself. Because if I'm talking about a project, though we have individualized projects, it requires a lot of research, which means a lot of discussions, a lot of questionnaire preparation. You will have to do the data. So obviously, even in an individual research project, they would have to definitely connect with with their if I'm talking about their group of people whom they're studying, right? And if I'm talking about the projects, otherwise, we have individual projects, we have group projects, or if you're talking about any other kind of activities based teaching learning process that happens in a classroom, everything would require a lot of collaboration among the children. Now, that also the facilitator plays a very important role. How are you grouping them into, the kinds of learners? You can allow the learners to be creating their groups, must be the similar kind of learners joined together, because they connect well. If I'm a kinesthetic learner, I connect well with another kinesthetic learner and I do it. Or it can be a mix and match of various learners. But then ultimately is my project and the goal as per the curriculum, is it, am I achieving it? So in the process, there's a lot of discussion that happens, no matter whether the child is so-called, if I'm putting it in quotes, intellectually superior. I mean, typically what we're talking in terms of the marks, if it's one of the top scorers or a bottom scorer, doesn't apply there at all. Here we're putting everybody on the same platform, right? So the moment you're putting everybody on the same platform, the confidence levels of the children automatically is there, interest is developing, everything is coming automatically among the children. Then you see there's a lot of social skills developed, because there's team building happening, decision making happening, there's leadership qualities that is built in there, a lot of resilience, a lot of adaptability, adjustability, you name it, all the 21st century skills are there. Right? And today, in today's world, if we are talking about anything that education should do to the children, should be getting them prepared for the world that they are yet to face,
Yes.
right? And for that, as Devi ma'am or Maitri ma'am was telling earlier, the students will ask us, are we going to take all what we have learned in school and college back to our organizations where we are going to work in future? Necessarily not. If you ask me as an educator, how much of my history or social I'm using? But also to make it relevant, that somewhere those values which I have learned from my school day content is what is helping me run my show today. That relevance, it comes through these kind of activities, because they are connecting with each other and they understand what is empathy, what is giving up, what is what is sharing, what is caring. Sometimes I might have to put 2 steps backward to allow somebody else to come forward. So there's a lot of give and take. This is automatically taught, which cannot be taught theoretically.
Yes.
No curriculum can teach this. And these are the skills they require to survive in any organization in future, right? So automatically things are taken care of.
So my question, the intent of this question is, today kids are in the closed classrooms.
Absolutely.
They might, a few set of students are always on the top rank, and when they go to the industry, when they face those setbacks, when they face rejections, when their colleagues are taking a step ahead, at that time they need that mindset to face all of these challenges, and many times they fail. So these life skills are very much important, and how they are being taught through these personalized
Absolutely.
training.
See, just to add on to one more line of whatever you're saying. See, when we're put into a group, I might be very good at technology, or my presentation skills might be really, really good, or my art work might be really good. Somebody else has a lot of content, intellectual knowledge, so he or she shares that with me. I put it across in the best manner possible. Another person can be statistically very good, and so he or she presents. So the concept is being learned. Learning is happening in the most fun way manner, right? So learning becomes fun, learning becomes joy, and learning becomes equality, right?
Yes.
Equity and equality, everything comes in. So there is no discrimination that you see over there, because then one automatically starts recognizing the talent of their peers, which they never knew earlier unless and until they came together for this. And then the appreciation comes in, the fact that, okay, I'm good at this, but I'm not still good at something else. So the give and take, the acceptance factor automatically comes in there.
That's a great observation, ma'am. With that, I have my next question to Mrs. Maitri. So, ma'am, how do you assess student progress and adjust the grading to align with the personalized learning where each student follows different paths?
You see, we have two kinds of assessments that you're very well aware of.
Yes.
Right? You have the formative and the summative, right? If you're a chef, the formative test would be tasting while the dish is being prepared, right? You check out the salt, you check out the spice, or whatever. And the summative would be after the whole dish is done, right? The best way to navigate assessment in personalized learning would be to do a formative assessment.
Okay.
That is, to assess the child with whatever they have learned. Right? It could be just a tiny unit, it could be a very small capsule, whatever. But it will only tell you the direction in which the student is going. So you can change the track and give them pointers, because it is self-learning to a large extent. Give them pointers to say how they can change their thinking, thereby changing their grade. So they will work towards changing their grade. We have a very beautiful progress card system which has come in by the CBSE. It is called as the holistic progress card. Right? There is no pass, no fail. It has come. We have implemented it up to class pre-primary, and then of course across all classes it is happening. But the thing is, there is no pass, no fail.
Okay.
Right? So a child can be a beginner, can be a basic learner, can be an advanced learner, or can be a proficient learner.
Okay.
So based on what their learning competency is, how well they learn, how well they are ready to go to the next level is decided by them. So in an activity, to identify where they are, you usually have rubrics, which are tools for assessment. So when you have the rubric, in the scenario in India, you know our classrooms are 40 plus at times.
Yes.
40 is the maximum. And it is not that we are dealing with 10 or 12 children,
Yes.
right? The challenge lies there.
Yes.
But when you're assessing 40 of them, you can even give them just one activity for assessment. It could be something based on the project that they have done. It could be a tiny quiz. It could be a puzzle. It could be anything. But you have to arrive at the criteria. As a facilitator, you should know how to mark the child.
Yes.
Did the child answer all the 5 questions? Then proficient. Did the child answer 3? Then advanced. No, not advanced. Basic. No, basic is one who does not answer much. Okay, so there are 3 levels of assessments which you can arrive at. But again, one-to-one interaction for an assessment is ideal, is recommended, but in the scenario of a classroom, some schools have even 60 students in a section. How would you interact with the child and how would you assess? Is my question to you.
Yes. It's very difficult.
Very difficult, right?
Yes.
But we need to have these criteria. Now you want to have a debate. You want to conduct debate as an assessment activity.
Yes.
They may have pre-learning. So they will have some idea of what it is going to be. But when you're having a debate, it's a team activity. Correct? You may have one-to-one, for and against. And you arrive and you mark the child.
Yes.
That is one way. Then other one could be, as they said, projects. Right? When you have more than one doing the project, it becomes a team effort.
Yes.
So they are children. What they spoke about was higher level, I presume. But at the child's level, a 12-year-old or 13-year-old will say, I did this, how is he or she getting the mark? So a best way there, since it is self-learning, we have to teach children also to assess what they are contributing to the project.
Yes.
That way you will have a fair balance of what the teacher's assessment as well as the self-assessment. So all these will help the assessment pattern. But I once again reiterate, all said and done, we have to bring the changes to the top.
Yes.
All schools are doing different methods of education and they are very successful at it. But at the end, all of us come as a major C, writing exams.
Yes.
I rest my case. Thank you.
Yes. So with that, I have my next question to Mrs. Devi. So, ma'am, what is one advice that you would like to give for educators who are just trying to explore student-centered learning?
It's very difficult to give only one advice.
You may give as much as
Yes.
possible.
See, there is a study which says that, there is 12% increase in the attendance of the students and there's 15% drop in the dropouts of the students when there is a student-centered learning.
Okay.
So when educators or any schools want to adapt this method, they have to keep in mind few things. The very first thing is whether the environment is inclusive and supportive. And we should never forget the requirements of students with special needs.
Yes.
So this environment is taken care, then students are taken care. Secondly, they need to think about the pillars of the organization, whom I usually refer as pillars, are teachers. Are the teachers professionally, technically trained? And do they have the sufficient resources and materials? So all this aspect has to be kept in mind, and timely assessment of teachers and motivation is definitely required so that the teachers become a better version of themselves every year. And third important point is the use of technology. As I already said, we are in generation alpha, now beta. So technology definitely plays a very vital role. So there is no separate entity as only education and only technology.
Yes.
It is all together. So we need to imbibe these technologies in our day-to-day base. And the final one, I would say educators should think about giving different options for the students. As Madam already said, not just the chalk and talk method and just the assessment will do. Lots of project-based learning, collaborative learning, experiential learning, gamification, or learning through projects and assignments and quiz and puzzles. I think all these put together will definitely create that interest in the students. So if any educator or a school can provide all these things, then why wait? Start a school immediately.
Yes, that's wonderful, ma'am. For that, I have my last question to Mrs. Vinita Anil. So, can you share some successful examples of schools or districts that have successfully made this transition?
See, I cannot be so very specific. If I'm going to do that, I'll be probably biased because it is definitely what statistics clearly shows, even through our NEP survey, is that every school has made the tiny step forward in accepting and adapting to the changes that is supposed to be made in the benefit of the children, right? Because across any curriculum has accepted the fact that it is student-centered learning that actually makes learning concrete. So, how am I going to do it? So, we do have some statistics saying that probably Tamil Nadu, because there were probably a lot of edutech companies that suddenly mushroomed during the COVID time, and that was highest in Tamil Nadu apparently, and then followed by Kerala and other states. But even if I'm specifying about Karnataka, the statistics clearly shows that no specific district can be pointed out to be saying that they clearly transition 100%. Everybody is keeping their baby steps. So if I'm talking about the rural areas, they do not have the technology still that has reached probably what we're talking about the smart classrooms that is there in the city limits. It's still not reached the rural areas. But haven't we seen a lot of wonderful mentors and teachers who are using the natural environment to even teach math, science, even social through hopscotch? The game that we all played and we grew up, right? It can be just the ball, catching the ball and trying to say how the gravity and everything works. So science and any subject is taught just from the nature, taking them out of the classroom, giving them the experience, because those children are connected with nature. They live in the soil and they are connected with that. So when you're making them feel comfortable in that environment, connecting them with that and then taking them to the classroom, the concretization of learning is happening there. But if I'm talking about the schools in the city or the educational institutions, let me not be restricting only to schools, educational institutions in the city limits. Now, if I'm going to take the children out, starting from the parents to everybody, first of all, we have a limitation of space in the city. Yeah, the very little space I have, can I accommodate everybody? No. Thirdly, are my children really connected to the soil? So much so like the rural? No, they are more tech savvy. So how do I make them, more of a blended learning where I cannot give up on my traditional teaching? Definitely, because the concept has to be driven very clear. Concretization of learning and teaching learning has to happen, but in the most feasible manner so that the students, as Devi ma'am said, am I making sure my dropouts are less and my interest in teaching and learning? Are my children looking forward to coming to school next day or to my institution next day, attending my class because they're looking at something new that is coming up to them, right? So with that, we can say that the city is probably trying to bring in more technology into their classrooms because of the space crunch, and those technologies used in the multi-faceted way by the teachers are equipping themselves to all that is the another way. So every district has made its own baby steps.
That's a wonderful answer, ma'am. So with that, I have one closing question to all three of you. Since we have spoken a lot about student-centered learning, their challenges and their baby steps, how do you all three see the future of student-centered learning in India?
Well, they have to get rid of the negatives first.
Okay.
All right. I mean, baby steps are taken everywhere
Yes.
for any initiative that the government has come forward with.
Yes.
But the point remains, how are we taking care of the higher education, the professional education, and does this meet the end? Does student-centered learning, they are knowledgeable,
Yes.
they gain knowledge, they enjoy learning, all that. But to be very practical, after a certain level of teaching, we insist on concept-driven learning, which is once again nothing but traditional.
Yes.
If they arrive at the concepts through student-centric learning, that means the student decides that this is what I want to do and these are the learning outcomes that I want to achieve, then we will be successful. So, to be on the positive side, I said, sure, why not? They will. I see a bright future for student-centric learning because that is now a universal system. They learn better. They learn better with student-centric learning. Nobody forces them to learn.
That's great.
See, I feel student-centered learning will be successful when we break this myth that life is successful only when I get the top rank, I get the highest package in an IT company, I go abroad on site. I have a big bungalow. I have cars. I have millions of dollars in my bank account. As long as we don't break this myth, it's not going to happen. Success of learning is not just mere making money. There's lots of other aspects. And parent support definitely plays a vital role when it comes to student-centered learning because they should be ready to accept this kind of changes.
Yeah, if I'm connecting your question even to the world today, we find many of the youngsters who are getting into their job profile, right? Within less than probably they don't even have that much of patience like any of us. The moment they've got into their so-called dream organization must be because it's been fed into their head by the parents and the family. Look, if you're here, then you are on the pedestal within the family, in the society, and so that. So it's for the dignity factor. They get in there, and in less than a year or two, they already lose interest towards the job.
Yes.
The whole thing is about, are you loving your job? Whatever it may be. Am I rating as, again, it is all coming back to the fact that it starts from the family. Are the parents of the child giving him or her, the confidence that you pick up any profession under the sun? It is good so long as you are able to be successful and you're enjoying it day in and day out, no matter how many more years you're working on it.
Yes.
Right? Are you loving your job every day? Are you looking forward to something new over there? Are you able to create something new in your own job that you love? Or are you going because of force, typically like a nursery kid who would go into school because you're pushed into it, right? So that factor has to come where we are talking about student-centered learning. You're saying it's a joyful learning. Are we talking about the joyful aspect throughout their life? We are forgetting that because life is a stress, and as adults, we are passing on that stress to the younger ones at a very young age. And every time we give them the false hopes, look, 10th grade is a turning point. After this, life is comfortable. Again, we give them the next false hope. It's all illusionary, those things that we put. At 12th grade, that's it, turning point. Then your life is set. But they know it very well, today's generation, that they are yet to explore the professional world, and there's a lot more, and it's a rat race.
It's never ending.
It's never ending rat race. We know it, they know it. Are we making every day joyful? At the end of the day, do they feel content about whatever they're doing?
True.
And have they made their life meaningful? Ultimately, it's all about that.
Wonderful. We had an amazing panel discussion. With that, we have concluded this session. I extend my heartfelt gratitude to all three of you. Thank you so much for sharing your invaluable inputs and thoughts on the topic. We look forward to have many more panels like this. For more such videos, visit our website www.theENN.com. Don't forget to like, share, comment and subscribe to our videos. Thank you for tuning in. This is Pallavi Kulkarni. We'll see you next time.